what's up, familia? Dayspring here with an episode of Power of X-Men. This is one episode I've wanted to do for a long time, so get comfortable. We're going to have a really great, fun chat about our God Queen, a.k.a. Jean Grey, and Jean Grey's whereabouts from the years 2003 through 2017, where recent X-Men books would seem to imply she was just dead. But we know that's not the case, and it's one of the biggest plot holes in Jean Grey's history, and we are going to dissect it. But before we get into it, ring that notification bell, hit that subscribe button. In 2003, Grant Morrison's new X-Men was coming to an end, and we had just gotten Planet X. And in Planet X, Zorn revealed himself to be Magneto, completely decimated New York City, and killed Jean Grey in the process. We know now, because of retcons, it really wasn't Magneto. It was actually Zorn. So is Magneto pretending to be Zorn, but was actually the real Zorn?
Don't understand, Paige. Don't understand.
So complicated. Retcons. But anyways, so Jean, as a Phoenix, approaches Magneto, or Zornito as we call him in fandom, approaches Zornito, and Zornito grabs her and gives her a planetary stroke because he was imbued with so much power that he transferred that power to Jean's body. And so Jean ends up dying in Scott's hands. And she tells Scott, saying, "Scott, you were my best friend. Live, Scott. I haven't seen you alive for such a long time. You have to live. All I ever did was die on you." So then the story flashes forward to 150 years in the future. Grant Morrison's swan song for their epic new X-Men narrative is called Here Comes Tomorrow. And in Here Comes Tomorrow, there is a Phoenix egg that is discovered. And from there hatches Jean Grey. And Jean Grey sees this dystopian future, and she sort of ascends into the white hot room. And she says, my friends deserve better than this. I have to amputate this entire future. So she's in the white hot room. And the white hot room, think of it as this higher plane of existence that's accessible to all Phoenix hosts across all time and dimension. It's located within the M'Kraan crystal. So Jean is in the white hot room surrounded by other Phoenixes. And among those other Phoenixes is Quentin Quire, because at the end of Riot at Xavier's, Quentin Quire ascends into a higher state of being. And in this case, it's the white hot room. So Jean is quite literally holding the entire universe in her hand. It's a 616. And we found out earlier in the story that Scott was at Jean's grave when Emma came, saying that she wanted to reopen the school. She wanted to reopen it with Cyclops. And she goes, "Scott, think about what we can do for each other, inspire an entire new generation of mutants. Don't you want to inherit the Earth?" And Scott's like, "No, someone else can have it. I'm done." And so because of those events, we got the Here Comes Tomorrow dystopian timeline, because Hank McCoy can't do anything right. Hank tried to reopen Xavier's school, but failed. He took Kick, which was a drug that was a conduit for Sublime to possess him. Back in the white hot room, Jean is holding the universe in her hand, and she's surrounded by everyone, and she's looking at the universe, and people are talking to her. There's a voice overheard saying, "This is a badly orphaned universe. It lost its parents when Unity broke out." And Jean starts crying. And then Quentin Quire says, "If you want to grow a new future for the one you cut away, you have to water it with your heart's blood. In that way." Oh, and I was also told to tell you to hurry. And Jean looks at him and goes, "Have we met?" And he's like, "Hundreds of times. But if it were me, I'd just let it die." And Jean just looks down at the universe and says, "Ha, live, Scott, live." And so she telepathically reaches out to Scott. In that moment, he walked away from Emma and pushes him to be with Emma. So he turns around and tells Emma yes, and kisses her. And that's how we get the Scott and Emma relationship. And that's how we have the current 616 universe. So Moira McTaggart and your multiple lives, it was Jean, our God Queen, that saved the universe. That is where we ended Grant Morrison's new X-Men. Jean was in the white hot room, operating on a cosmic level. Now, we got another story in 2005 called Phoenix Endsong. And Phoenix Endsong dealt with this rogue team of Shi'ar that were embittered by the events of Dark Phoenix, that had lost family because of the Dark Phoenix event that happened, the original Dark Phoenix event that happened. So they want to punish the Phoenix, so they reconstitute the Phoenix. One of them says, I'm scanning the Rapture, but there's no sign of the host, the X-Man, Jean Grey. And they're all shocked. They're like, the Rapture's manifesting without her? How is that even possible? And so the Phoenix evades the Shi'ar team that's trying to injure it. I guess they resurrected the Phoenix that was already dead just to hurt it. The Phoenix escapes to Earth and goes to Jean Grey's grave. And it's like, Jean Grey, I need you. And Jean Grey goes, no, no, no. Can't you see? We're dead. And the Phoenix is like, what do you mean? And Jean's like, we're both dead. We're in the white hot room about to step in. And the Phoenix is like, no, we already left. And merges with Jean again. Later on in the story, Jean is with Logan, and Logan is like, are you Jean or are you the Phoenix messing with my head? And Jean says, I'm always Jean and I'm always the Phoenix. I died, I scattered into 1 trillion pieces, and then I started to come together outside of the white hot room. But I'm starting to realize that now parts of me never came home. I'm out of balance and I need to try again. And so then Wolverine starts stabbing her multiple times. And in the story, the Phoenix then goes to Emma and possesses Emma. And finally, Jean is like, you know what? Enough of this. So Jean grabs Emma and rips the Phoenix out of her. And the Phoenix is like, Jean Grey, how could you do that without me, without my power? And Jean is like, because I am you. And the Phoenix is like, so this longing I felt to come back to this planet, to see Cyclops, to be part of these friends, it's actually your longing because you and I are one and the same. In the end, the Shi'ar come again, and they have an event horizon that they implement, and Gina's White Phoenix is able to stop it. As the event horizon goes on and Gina's saving everyone, she has a moment with Cyclops, and she goes, Cyclops, I have to go now. I'm so scared. And Cyclops says, who are you? And she says, Jean Grey. And Cyclops is like, that's right. You are Jean Grey. No matter what the universe tells you, no matter where you go in the cosmos, you're Jean Grey.
My time here has ended. I must depart.
Okay, Phoenix Endsong was originally pitched as the final Jean Grey story that would ever be told. Joe Quesada had kind of said that this was going to be the last Jean Grey story ever told. And we got a sliver of what could have happened in that story editorially, because in Uncanny X-Men, Chris Claremont wrote a scene between Rachel and Betsy, where Betsy says that, like, we came face to face with the Phoenix, but this time Jean died for good because the Phoenix severed itself from Jean's soul. Obviously, that's not what happened, because Phoenix Endsong was #1 when it published. So they quickly changed the trajectory of that story, right? Or that was a story that was very early on pitched around the office and no one bothered to tell Chris Claremont. I guess it was 2005 was the early odds, so maybe they just forgot to send him an AIM message that, like, hey, by the way, like, we're sending this to your AOL email. We're updating the story for Phoenix Endsong. But I guess no one told Chris what was happening there. After Phoenix Endsong, a little story called House of M happened, where the Scarlet Witch says,
No more mutants.
Causing over 90% of mutants to lose their power.
and there's only 198 mutants left on the planet. There's no new X genes being activated, and it's worrisome that the X-Men are going to go extinct. So then we get a follow-up story to Phoenix Endsong called Phoenix War Song, where the Cuckoos are being possessed by the Phoenix. But there's a blink and you miss it cameo of our God Queen Jean Grey that no one ever talks about. The Cuckoos are at the mansion and they hear a voice and they go to the graveyard and they go to Jean's grave. And she says, Jean Grey's voice says, no, 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 it's not time yet. Soon it will be time, but not yet. So what could that be in reference to, right? Well, I'm going to give you some behind the scenes tea. I worked at Wizard in 2006. So we were told about an upcoming story called Messiah Complex, where a baby with an active X gene was going to be born, and the baby can either destroy the future or save the future. What does that sound like? Good Phoenix, Dark Phoenix, right? So the idea was that the X-Men's first lady was reborn in their darkest hour to either save them or destroy them. The baby was intended to be Jean. Now, we know that in the Messiah Complex, the original script for Messiah Complex. So it's even published. Even if you don't accept my behind the scenes tea that Jean was going to be the Messiah baby, the script in the trade paperback for Messiah Complex clearly states that Cyclops knows exactly who this baby is and why Cable has to go. So the idea was that Cable would raise baby Jean Grey reborn in the future in the same way that Jean and Scott raised him in the future. It was supposed to be a homage to that relationship. At the end of Messiah Complex, how it was published, it was left very ambiguous. Scott is holding the baby, and Scott tells Emma, I have him in my arms. And Cable laughs and goes, her, you're holding her. And the baby reaches out to Cyclops, who has a locket around his neck, and it opens up to a photo of him and Jean. And Cyclops is just dead behind the eyes. And Emma comes in telepathically saying, Scott, are you okay? Your heartbeat. And he goes, yes, Emma, I'm just assessing the situation. Fun fact, Jean made Scott's heart skip in Phoenix Endsong. It is clearly stated that Scott's heart flutters with Jean around. So the fact that Emma calls out his heart skipping, another indication that the baby was supposed to be Jean Grey. Throughout this time, the Phoenix pieces all around the Marvel Universe start leaving their hosts. The Cuckoos lose their Phoenix. Rachel is in space and she loses her Phoenix. And she even says, no, not now, Mom. And the Phoenix leaves her. So by all intents and purposes, at this point, we are led to strongly believe that Messiah baby, Hope, is actually Jean Grey reborn, right? So Emma Frost has 3 instances where she is confronted with the notion that Hope could be Jean Grey reborn. One is during the Fear Itself arc, where the Phoenix hovers over Emma and says, she always comes back, doesn't she? In fact, she's back right now, and you know what to do with the little redhead. In the Sisterhood arc, where Emma is being held psychically, she sees Jean coming to her saying, prepare for what's to come. So then at the end of Second Coming, Emma is looking at Hope in front of the bonfire, and Hope turns around and smiles and looks a lot like Jean Grey, and Emma freaks out. Obviously, during AVX, editorially was very strongly given to us that Hope was not Jean Grey reborn, because in AVX issue 0, Hope says, I'm not your dead wife. That's not my story, Scott. I know you're worried that the Phoenix is going to turn me into some kind of monster, but I'm not your dead wife. That is not my story. So we at that point, we were told that was editorial telling us that Hope was not Jean. But at the end of AVX, we do see Scott becoming completely Dark Phoenix and Jean coming to him saying, that's enough. Stop it. Scott, you need to let go of the Phoenix. And we also got a little subsequent scene about that in Uncanny X-Men, where Scott ascends all the way up to the cosmos, and he sees this white wall. He goes, the roof above me is white. And there's a voice telling me, you're a fool, Scott. Tell Logan I love the name of the school. So at the end of AVX, Jean came to Cyclops, and that seems to kind of put an end to where Jean could have been at this point. Jean Grey comes back in Phoenix Resurrection officially because the Phoenix comes to resurrect her, but there's no talk about Here Comes Tomorrow. Even in AVX, when Scott and Emma get the Phoenix Force, they don't seem to be aware of the Phoenix core or the White Hot Room, or that Jean telepathically pushed Scott to be with Emma. And we never see that locket that Scott gave Emma during Messiah Complex. Again, it's complete erasure. It's a complete Jean erasure. So what ends up happening is that Teen Jean comes from the past into the present, and that's the stories of Jean Grey we get, and we are just told that Jean Grey is just dead. And then Phoenix Resurrection happens in 2017, and the Phoenix brings back Jean for some unknown reason. It's never stated why now, after 13 years editorially, why the Phoenix decided to come and resurrect Jean again, especially since last time we really saw Jean on Earth, she was with the Phoenix. But anyways, she is brought back, and in Tom Taylor's X-Men Red, we're told that Jean was a phoenix. She burned bright, and then there was nothing. There was just darkness, and now she was back. That's a big plot hole because Jean was clearly never just dead. It was never just dead. We knew that Jean was in the White Hot Room, incubating, right, operating on a cosmic level. Then she was called out of the White Hot Room, and as she was called out, her pieces scattered everywhere, and she had to get those pieces back because she was going to be the baby Messiah, or reborn following the witch's curse. But because editorial switched hands because of the Fox film rights, and there was an embargo on X-Men, who knows why, but they abandoned that story, and now the company line was Jean Grey was just dead. So I'm hoping in Louise Simons's Jean Grey series that we're actually going to help bridge that Jean has always existed in the White Hot Room, that the Phoenix is a manifestation of Jean's power all across the Marvel Universe. Anyways, Familia, that is our breakdown of the greatest Jean Grey plot hole. What do you think? Do you think Jean Grey was just dead during these years? I don't know how anyone could argue that she was just dead, because at the end of Here Comes Tomorrow, she's clearly very much alive as White Phoenix, saying, "Ha, live, Scott, live." And at the end of Phoenix Endsong, she's very clearly in her White Phoenix costume saying, "I'm going to go find my pieces. Goodbye, Scott." Even if you don't want to accept that Hope was originally intended to be Jean Grey Reborn, what was published was that Jean was very much alive and operating on a cosmic level. Hit that notification button so you can hear more of our rants here at Power of X-Men. Are you a big fan of Jean Grey? Do you think Jean Grey should have just stayed dead? Would you have liked Hope to be Jean Grey Reborn? Leave your comments below, and we'll catch more episodes later.